Seventh meeting of House Elections, Constitutional Amendments, Intergovernmental Affairs is called to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Branscombe, Representative Decker, Representative Gooch, Representative Herron, Representative Hodgson, Representative Imes,
Here.
Representative Cook, Representative Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Scott Lewis,
Here.
Representative Moser,
Here.
Representative Raymond,
Here.
Representative Swan, Representative Weber, Representative Callaway,
Here.
Representative Bratcher.
Here. Let's make sure our phones are on mute. And make sure that your green light is on when you're speaking, committee members and guests. Anybody like to introduce a special guest? Representative Raymond.
Yes, I want to introduce one of my students from U of L. This is Eli Pauley. He's a West Kentucky boy, senior at U of L, math major. He's going to become a lawyer for some reason, and he's going to do a whole lot of good. Thanks for coming, Eli.
Thank you. Let's give him a hand. Every math major needs a hand, that's for sure. Thank you for studying math. All right, so House Bill 174 is our only bill, so sponsor, please, front and center. Floor is yours. Go ahead and introduce your guests, or have them introduce themselves, and the floor is yours.
All right. Representative Josh Callaway. I'm in 10th District.
Andrew Vandiver. I'm the president of EdChoice Kentucky, and I also serve as the associate director of the Catholic Conference of Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Akia McNary, parent.
So I appreciate the opportunity to come before the committee today. I'd like to say to the committee and all those that are here, welcome to Frankfort near the end of session. So things are just a little bit hectic right now. People are in all types of committees going on throughout the building. And so we've all been jumping back and forth. And with all that is going on, I want to say that this is an absolute, extremely important day for us, for Kentucky, to present this bill. Last year, the people of Kentucky actually elected the most pro-school choice General Assembly that has ever existed in history and spoke loudly time and time again in support of educational choice options. So the bill that is before us today is House Bill 174, and it's really a very simple bill. It would put an amendment on the ballot in 2024 so that the voters can decide whether Kentucky is going to be a state that supports all families and all students when it comes to education. The Supreme Court's decision that was made striking down the educational opportunity accounts that we have passed as a legislature took a punitive approach to families simply wanting more options for their children. And even worse, this striking down of this and the what they had determined in regard to the decision that they made actually throws into doubt some other programs that are currently being used by families throughout the state and non-public schools, and then some of the bus transportation that we are actually doing and funding right now for non-public schools. The text of the bill is really simple. The ballot language will be easily understood by the voters. And I want to be clear about this. House Bill 174 is not an anti-public school bill. I want that to be very clear. When we talk about school choice, a lot of times we have discussions about either or. And school choice to me is absolutely not about either or. If you look back at what we have done as a legislature, I have been proud to have been a part of giving some historic funding increases to the public school system, being a part of full-day kindergarten funding for schools across Kentucky. And so while we are working in these areas of public education, I think it's also important that we have a mindset shift, and that is what has been taking place in Kentucky across parents and voters as well as the legislature, and that is this shift that we are going to put students first. We have funded systems, we have funded structures. All of those things are necessary. They have to be in place, but students are really what it's all about. We can have the best buildings, we can have a lot of the best systems out there in place, but if we are not meeting the need of every student throughout the state, we're doing a disservice to the kids, and that's really what this piece of legislation is about. It couples together parents that are looking for the best fit for their child and gives them the ability to be able to move forward with putting their child exactly where they need to be. One of the things that has been brought up often in regard to this particular issue is that if we had school choice, we would be more or less kind of, because public schools seem to be required to take these kids no matter what their problems are and what their situations are, and that we would be leaving those students in those schools and other kids would be going to other different types of opportunities. But I would argue that it does just the opposite. There are people that have children that have specific needs, and today many of them, because of means, cannot give their child the best fit for their child, or the education the best fit for their child. And so that's all that we are trying to do with this piece of legislation. Educational choice continues to sweep across the nation. Every state surrounding the state of Kentucky has some type of educational choice for the parents and for the children. And it seems like right now, every week, we're seeing something in the news where other states are doing something and allowing parents to have choice for their children. And again, I would say, Mr. Chairman, this is not an either or. This is in addition to. We have kids that have needs, and we want to meet the needs of every child in Kentucky. And that's really what this amendment is about. So with that being said, I would like Ms. Akia to speak just a little bit about her concerns as well as her passion for this. She's been a great advocate for this when it wasn't popular and when it's become more popular from the poll standing, and Mr. Vandiver will talk about that.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for considering this important amendment that would change the lives of thousands of children in Kentucky. My name is Akia McNeary. I'm a mother of 3 school-age children. My family is a perfect example that why one size fits all doesn't work for every family. 2 of my children attend private school and the other attends public school. Each of them are in a learning environment that they can thrive. Unfortunately, the cost of giving my children the right education for them is enormous on my budget. I was very excited when Educational Opportunity Account Program had passed in 2021 because it would have been an enormous help, but unfortunately, opponents filed a lawsuit to stop it. The Kentucky Supreme Court decided in last December was a huge blow to parents like myself. But I am not going to give up because our children deserve this. I am here today to ask you to help each student in Kentucky that all deserves the education that best fits their needs. You can help make this a reality by passing House Bill 174.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Andrew Vandiver, and I serve as the president of the EdChoice Kentucky Coalition. When the Kentucky Supreme Court struck down the Education Opportunity Account Act just this past December, we knew we only had one option going forward, and that was to pass a constitutional amendment. And so House Bill 174 is a step towards giving thousands of students the opportunities they're going to need to succeed in the classroom that's going to work best for them. EdChoice Kentucky recently conducted a poll that showed the majority of Kentuckians would support a school choice constitutional amendment. It included 75% of Republicans and 60% of independents supporting that type of proposal. House Bill 174 is a product of local stakeholders and legal experts coming together in order to solve the problem created by the Kentucky Supreme Court decision this last year. And these groups took action because we knew that both public and non-public school students deserve support when it comes to reaching their full potential in education. So we're grateful for Representative Callaway for filing this legislation. We're grateful for each of you considering this bill today. And I'll just ask you to pass House Bill 174 because Kentucky's kids are counting on you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that being said, we're open for any questions that committee members might have.
We have two members that have questions. Do you want to wait till it's over, Representative Moser and Raymond, or do you want to talk now or ask now? Josie? Huh? Well, we have four more people to speak on it. Yes, go ahead.
Representative Callaway, I wanted to read the language that would be on the ballot and ask you a question about it. So in the bill, right, it says the language that would be on the ballot that voters would vote on, and the first opportunity we would have to do that would be in 2024. It says the General Assembly may provide for the educational costs of students outside of the system of common schools. Sections 183, 184, 186, and 189 of this Constitution shall not prevent any provision for educational costs of students outside of the system of common schools, nor require a referendum for any such provision for educational costs, so long as no funds are used from the Common School Fund. We don't know what that means. Do you think the average voter will understand that on their ballot?
Absolutely. I believe that through the communication that we will put out is that they will understand that, because one specific thing I think that is important. These sections that are in there and the fact that it says that it doesn't prevent them clears it up for me. I'm not an attorney, but it helps me understand that no other section of the Constitution is going to prevent us from being able to allocate these monies outside of the schools, the public school, common school system. And to be honest with you, it's absolutely important because of current laws that we have to reference these things in there. So there's specific things that we're required to put on there, and if someone has a question, they can research that out. And if you have anything that you would add to that as well.
Well, I think it's important. The Kentucky Supreme Court with the Marcy's Law decision really called for there to be very specific language in the ballot amendment. So we have to be really abundantly clear from a legal perspective as to what this amendment will do. And I think as far as your average voter goes, there's going to be a lot of education that's going to go into next year as far as letting them know exactly what the amendment does and how it's going to help them. But I think in terms of just that first sentence, if you're outside the system of common schools means public schools, you're going to receive support. The legislature can offer you support, and that is the crux of it.
I don't know that the average voter knows that common schools means public schools. May I ask a follow-up question, please? So we know from previous debate and research that if Kentucky were to start opening charter schools, they would primarily open in large cities, Lexington, Louisville, Northern Kentucky. So in your area, I don't know that there's going to be charter networks locating in your area. So do you believe with a measure like this that Kentucky tax dollars should pay for kids to go to religious schools?
So this amendment absolutely doesn't do anything of that sort. What this amendment does is it allows the legislature to have the opportunity to put some type of school choice program in place. This is not allowing for charter schools per se and a program. This is not allowing for Christian schools, private schools, religious schools as a program. That is a discussion that we'll have at a later date. The Supreme Court said that we could not make a law that allowed for educational opportunities for students outside of the public common school system. That was the ruling that they came back to us and basically said, if you want to have a school choice program, you have to change your constitution. And what I'm trying to do is to assert the legislature to say, we make the laws, we're making this determination, and we're going to change the Constitution and allow us to have the conversation and be able to develop programs that would best suit kids in Kentucky.
Thank you. To clarify, Andrew, you're representing the Catholic Conference and you're sitting at the table. Would you like to see Kentucky implement a program where tax dollars pay for kids to go to religious schools?
So I do want to make I'll answer your question, but charter schools are different than what this proposes. Charter schools are a form of public school. That's in litigation now. It's a completely separate issue. In terms of what I would like to see, I'd like to see Kentucky trust parents and support parents regardless of where their kids go, and that include religious schools. They include non-religious schools. Right now, the status quo with Kentucky Supreme Court is once your child steps out of a public school, they receive no support. They can't receive any support. That raises a lot of problems. And I think it's unfair. You've seen non-public school enrollment increase by over 25,000 kids in Kentucky in the last 2 years. Those families deserve support just as much as any other kids, and we should also support public school students. We can do both.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes.
So it's not, so for my kids, I have kids with attention deficit disorder. I placed him into the public school setting. He went to private school, then he went to public school. He didn't thrive in public school. So I had to make a financial hardship choice and place him back into private school because the classroom size of 9 worked better for him than the classroom size of 20. I'm asking just so that myself and parents like myself can have a choice to put them in the best education possible for the kids. I have a kid that's in public school. He's been in public school his whole entire, since kindergarten. That works for him. But my other 2 kids, public school just don't work for them. And I just feel like I should have a choice and a say-so as to where my child goes.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. This is a very complex, I believe, conversation to have. I am someone who is a supporter of our public school system. I am a product of public schools, but I also am aware of situations as yours as public schools doesn't work for all students. I currently have a niece and a nephew who were not thriving in public school, and we as a family are doing our best to pay for private tuition right now, and they are doing better. So I get and understand it. I think for me, my biggest concern is that if we go down this route of even making it a possibility to open this up, what does this mean for our overall public school system? I think that when you look at historically what has happened around the nation as it relates to school choice programs or charter schools, that there has also been a lot of disparities as far as which schools will take certain students. So that is very concerning. I do have a couple of questions. I think that someone gave the data of the support of Kentuckians who support school choice. Did you mention what the percentage of Democrats, what that support was? I think I heard you say independents.
I can look that up. I have it here in front of me. For Democrats, it's a little bit more mixed. It's 31% support, 53% opposed, 16% undecided. So obviously we got some work to do. I will say, as far as Democrat-Republican issues, before this legislature flipped Republican, we had 10 Democrat co-sponsors on the bill. As a Democratic bill in the House, filed by Representative Tommy Thompson out of Western Kentucky. We had Louisville representatives co-sponsoring the bill. And, there's governors like Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, who's a big school choice champion. So it's really a bipartisan issue. Senator Cory Booker's been a champion, Senator Dianne Feinstein. We'd like to see more Democratic support, and we'll always keep fighting for that support. But that's where it stands right now.
Thank you. Chairman, I've got another question.
Go ahead.
So the other question I have is that it seems like that this is a route that we're probably going to end up going down. And I know, Representative Callaway, you talked about that this piece of legislation itself just puts this issue on the ballot. But my question is, have you all done any thoughts or looked down the road as far as once we open this can of worms, is what I'll call it, once we open it, what is the potential and what does it look like for our public school system as it relates to funding. And I know that there's a couple of different options. And so I think, again, my concern is if we take kids out of public schools, will that money follow that student? And then what's just going to happen to our public school system?
Thank for that question. I think that's going to be a decision for the legislature. So once this would pass and the public would weigh in on this and allow us the opportunity to change the Constitution, then that will be up to the legislature to decide at that time what this program would look like and how far it would go. You look at what we did with House Bill 563, there's an option, but I think it will be the legislature as a whole would determine what that would look like. I will tell you from my perspective, this is what I'm committed to. I'm committed to voting to make sure there's funding to fund every child to be educated in the state of Kentucky as to the best that they can be educated. So that's the commitment that I make coming into this, is that I will always vote to make sure that every child has the funding necessary to be educated in the state of Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, may I briefly
Yes,
answer?
go ahead.
Okay. So I know this is a big concern as far as change goes, and it's a valid concern. We want to make sure our public school students continue to thrive and get the support they need. When you look at states that have educational choice policies, by and large, every study has shown, or practically every study has shown, that public school students are doing better in those states. So when you look at Florida, Florida's had strong bipartisan support for school choice. Every time a school choice proposal's been put out there, it's had strong bipartisan support from both parties. And that's because public and private school students are thriving in Florida. No matter how you measure it, outcomes have increased for students with special needs, students of color, low-income students. They have all seen improvements in their academic outcomes. And when you look at states that have had the largest school choice programs and the longest serving students in those states, Arizona, Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to leave out Indiana. When you look at those states that have had school choice for a long time, they have really robust programs. Their public school funding has gone up in those states. Objectively, you can look at the data. Public school funding has gone up, and student outcomes in public schools have gone up based on the NAEP scores and other state testing measures. And so just objectively, those students have not fallen behind. And what I would make the case is that oftentimes when you see school choice legislation pass, you also see increases in public school funding. And that's what we saw in 2021. At the same time the Education Opportunity Account Act was passed, there was, I think, $140 million put into kindergarten funding. And so I think you can do both, and that's what I would argue for.
Thank you.
All righty. We have some people that have signed up to speak. Karen Guffey, please come forward. Citizen. All right, that's a good organization. Turn on your microphone.
Thanks. I'm a native-born Kentuckian. My mother, who just turned 97 last week, is a retired teacher, very strongly grew up in aunts in Laurel County that were teachers, and I very strongly believe in our public schools. I'm very concerned about this bill. I'm very concerned about, we have not looked at the data of states like Missouri or Oklahoma that have starved their public education schools. In Missouri, they now have 4-day week education because they can't afford to run their buses. Their schools are hurting. Their schools are falling apart, all because of choice. Now, I do think there's a good time to have choice, like what kind of pizza you want, what kind of pies you want. But I'll tell you, when it comes to education in Kentucky, I think we need to support our public schools. Right at this time, my daughter is teaching 7th grade algebra. Loves it. You want to keep people like her. She was a governor's scholar from our state. We have so many teachers that are right now teaching all across our state, and we need to be supporting them. We don't need to be dividing up the limited pool of money. And I know that this legislature has given more money. That's because the costs have gone up. There are costs to running buses. There are costs to having teachers. There are costs to getting more education. And as a state, I don't think we need to divide that up. In my county, we have magnet schools. If you want your child to go to STEAM Academy, you sign up for it. If you want your child to go to learn different languages, you sign up for it. I wish every county in Kentucky had that option. And I don't understand why we aren't looking at that. We need to be positive. I want you to think about it. We have one of the best commissioners of education and a great state board of education. My husband grew up in Clinton County, one-room schoolhouse, didn't have the best opportunities back then. And when he went to UK as an engineering student, he was really, really scared and really worried. He had a great engineering professor, Lee Todd, who went on to become a University of Kentucky college president. He's on the State Board of Education. You have some outstanding people. You need to look at them. And if you have not looked at, as a legislator, if you have not looked at the high standards that are of our state curriculum, you need to look at that. It's easy to access. Any parent can access that. But can you say that for some of the private schools that you're talking about wanting to go to? Where is their accountability? In our public schools, you have site-based councils. They are your level of accountability. Most of us have wonderful boards of education. And you know what? We need to be supporting them. We do not need to be dividing this money up. And I want to talk about the realities of small schools. When my husband and I blended our family, my stepson was going to a small school classroom of 8. Turns out he was not doing well at all by fourth grade. He was not learning well. I looked at their curriculum, or what they said was curriculum. It was horrible. And the teachers were not certified teachers. What accountability do you have as you look at this for choice? In the public schools, you better believe there's accountability. My lesson plans had to really match the standards. And I want you to look at, why are we not enthusiastic and excited about our public schools? What are we doing in our state? And why shouldn't we be number one in education? We really should be. Our public schools should be our pride and joy. We shouldn't just be happy about our sports teams, although I'm a sports fan. We need to be proud of our public schools, and our public school teachers need to hear from you. Our superintendents need to feel you're behind them. And we need to feel that you are not dividing up the resources they need. Thank you.
Another one from that great organization, A Kentucky Citizen, Chuck Eddy.
I believe we have millions of members.
Yeah.
Oh, now I got to go to my notes.
We have 15 minutes to finish this, so go ahead.
I promise you I will not take 15 minutes, sir. Good morning. I'm Chuck Eddy. I'm a proud K-12 graduate of public schools. The lead sponsor, Representative Josh Callaway, says this is an extremely important bill, and yet it is only now being brought forward for consideration on the 26th day of a 30-day session. So as I see it, this late introduction is an effort to slip it past public scrutiny. American democracy has 3 pillars: the right to vote, the right to free speech, and public education. These are what has allowed the U.S. to flourish as a nation. There have been many efforts to get us, Kentucky taxpayers, to pay for private schools. They have been consistently ruled unconstitutional. Why? Our Kentucky Constitution currently states that it's the responsibility of the Commonwealth to provide for a system of common schools to educate our citizens. Only common schools. Kentucky is 36th out of 50 states in expenditure per public school student. Kentucky actually spends less today per public school student than we did in 2008 when adjusted for inflation. And this is in spite of the increased costs that Ms. Guffey just mentioned. So today we see the effort to change the Kentucky Constitution so that Kentucky tax dollars can be used for private school students with no limitations. The wording is very misleading. Let me read from the proposed amendment. It is proposed that a new section to the Constitution of Kentucky to be read as follows. The General Assembly may provide for the educational costs of students outside of the system of common schools. Sections 183, 184, 186, and 189 of this Constitution shall not prevent any provision for educational costs of students outside of the common school system of common schools, nor require a referendum for any such provision for educational costs, so long as no funds are used from the Common School Fund. Let me read that again. so long as no funds are used from the Common School Fund. This is very misleading. Kentucky tax dollars are put in different budgets, transportation, many different budgets. So there's a Common School Fund. There can be a private school fund as well, but it will, as a matter of course, reduce the total tax dollars available, thereby reducing tax dollars for public schools. I see supporters wearing their yellow scarves showing their support for using public tax money, our public tax money, for private schools. Do not change Kentucky's commitment to public education. Please vote no on this improper use of our tax dollars. Thank you.
Akia McNary. Oh, I'm sorry. And, yeah, he's already talked. The KEA rep, I can't read your, Mary.
Good afternoon. I apologize.
Turn your microphone on, please.
I apologize for not being able to reading my left-handed scrawl, Representative Bratcher. My name's Mary Rubel. I'm the Executive Director of the Kentucky Education Association.
And I'm Eddie Campbell. I'm a middle and high school music teacher from Knox County, currently serving as president of the Kentucky Education Association.
I will keep this short. I know time is limited. This proposed bill would essentially nullify 4 separate sections of the Kentucky Constitution, all of which have to do with this body's obligation to the public schools. Section 183 requires you to establish an efficient system of common schools. Section 184 talks about the Common School Fund and requires a referendum to be, so the question is put to the citizens if the school funds are to be used for any other purpose. Sections 186 and 189 essentially require that tax dollars be used for public schools only and prohibits its use for sectarian, denominational, or religious schools. For the proponents of this bill to say that all it's going to do is create choice is disingenuous. By nullifying those 4 sections of the Constitution, it opens up a wide array of legislative options that the founders of Kentucky and the citizens of Kentucky do not currently contemplate. The much discussed decision by the Kentucky Supreme Court said 2 things. One, that tax credits are in fact public revenue. It also said that the scheme that was put forward was unconstitutional because it was not put to the people. It was based on, the decision was based on Section 184 that requires a referendum. If the proponents of school choice are so confident that that's what the people of Kentucky want, there is currently a constitutional fix for this without making changes to the Constitution, and it is simply to put the question to a referendum of the people. This is unnecessary. It is wide-ranging. It is extreme. And in response to that decision, all that's required is a referendum to the citizens of Kentucky. If you have confidence in them, if you believe that they support your cause, give them the chance to say that. But by implementing this change in the Kentucky Constitution, you are taking away the voice of the citizens of Kentucky who should be able to vote on a referendum on that issue.
All right. Round up the votes. There's 2 people in the other committees that said they wanted to vote on this. They got about 5 minutes to get here. So we'll stand at ease at 5 minutes if they're not here. There's one. And then Matt Cook across the way. John, you want to go get him? Well, we're getting Matt Cook, and go ahead and call the roll. We need a motion. Motion on the bill, second. Call the roll.
Representative Branscombe. Representative Callaway.
Yes.
Representative Decker. Representative Gooch. Representative Herron.
May I explain my vote?
Yes.
As I said, this issue is very complex, and there's a lot. I know that in Jefferson County, there are some schools that don't even have an activity bus or a bus to allow kids to participate in after-school activities and get home. And I'm just very concerned about if we pass something like this, what is this going to do overall to our public education system? Today I am going to be a no vote, but I do think that we do need to figure out ways to not only make sure that our public education system is funded, but then also find some options for families. Thank you.
Representative Hodgson. Representative Imes.
Yes.
Representative Cook. Representative Derek Lewis.
No.
Representative Scott Lewis.
No.
Representative Moser.
Yes.
Representative Raymond.
May I explain my vote?
Yes.
I think this piece of legislation is a really bad look for the legislature. We passed an unconstitutional bill and we didn't like it, so we're going to come back and try and change the Constitution. There's better ways to support families. This is essentially a legislative temper tantrum, and I vote no.
Representative Swan.
No.
Representative Weber. Yes. Representative Bratcher.
Yes, and I'd like to explain my vote. You know, this issue has been around in some form or fashion for many years, and I just keep wondering who gave Kentucky this great idea that they're the only state in this whole region that has 0 charter schools when every one of our surrounding schools has over 100 last time I checked, every single one. Many border states have quite a few private schools that thrive. And Kentucky's at 0, not on all of this. And where in the world do we get, where did we corner the market on such intelligence? I mean, is our schools that great, public schools, that you'd want to make a stand, that you can't make one change towards privatization? Is that where we're at? This is a good bill, and let the people decide. It's not a scam. It's letting the people decide on how they want to proceed in the education of their children, not your children, not in this committee's children, and not in public schools don't own these children. So I vote yes. What was it? 8 votes yes. How many no? 5 no's. The bill passes with favorable expression. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.